Maybe I'll just ask one last question. Has being a feminist in psychology, do you feel has that posed any obstacles to you? Mm-hmm. We've talked a lot about all of the very positive ways in which it's influenced all of what you do. Have you ever felt that it's been an obstacle?
Yes. You know, it's because it's so much. I couldn't imagine being a psychologist in any other way. I wouldn't be a psychologist if I wasn't a feminist psychologist. So it's not such an obstacle that I wish it weren't the case kind of thing. But there are, you know, the best I can, I guess, articulate it is perhaps the topic of microaggressions, and that there are microaggressions against feminism and feminist psychology, and I think that one of the downsides, in some ways, of having so much wonderful, positive feminist mentoring, is that you think the world has changed, and somehow you're still invested in changing it. I mean, you think the world of academia has changed because obviously there's much that still needs to change, and so so without naming names or without, I think, feedback that I've gotten along the way that is vague feedback that maybe for the next few years you need to act a little more like a man, maybe don't publish in journals that have titles like women in it, don't use the word breast so much in your work on breast cancer, How
to avoid that?
Yeah. You're too nice. Maybe that's not a feminist issue, but to some degree, I think it is, right, and I think the try to be more like a man had many meanings in that case. I spent many evenings trying to unravel, was that partly was a message about doing more quantitative research, about not being so nice to students, not being so supportive, and as well as possibly the ways in which one takes up space and has voice at meetings or not, lots of complicated meanings embedded within that. So I think you're less likely at this moment, not to say it doesn't happen, to experience direct, work, but more, I think, a dismissing of your scholarship sometimes, and I think maintaining that sense of, yes, I'm doing something important, knowing that sometimes can be a challenge, that, if you can, you can sometimes move towards buying into, maybe this is too specialized, maybe, maybe it's, not addressing, directly, trying to solve poverty right now, so I'm making a large enough contribution, to the world, and but I think that's remembering that is, in and of itself a feminist issue, and again, sort of remind, then going back in your mind at least to that invisible college, such a useful, terminology to remember that, okay, that, here's what this means, but there, so I think it doesn't come up so much directly. But I think more indirectly in feedback you get, maybe tone down the feminism kind of comments. Yeah.
Okay, one last question. I swear I'll finish. What's the best thing about being a feminist psychologist for you?
I think that, teaching, for example, right now, psychology of women, and I'm teaching to non-traditional students in this case, which a little bit older than your traditional college student, and I think remembering, right, there are things I can read and still be re-inspired by, but you don't have always that same, coming across something for the first time and having your sort of world turned upside down, and so getting to experience that through students' experiences really kind of keeps it alive for me, and is very special, and kind of helps me feel like, okay, there are going to be people out there who, in various ways, some are going to be in psychology, psychology, and some are going to be in film, and some are going to be in other places, but, that, are leaving, whether it's, in our mentoring relationship or whether it's in the classroom environment, asking different questions and sort of asking, starting to say, what assumptions are being made here, that what's being taken for granted here, and seeing that transformation, I think, is very, very special. And I think the community of feminist psychologists, is very special. They're mentors, they're friends, they're, I feel very much a part of something. And I don't know that my peers I think some of my peers in other areas have that, and it's interesting, even in my lab space, I think my students have created that as well, and I think actually in your case, from what I understand, that's the case too, and I think there is something about perhaps, what you aspire for, people pick up on and create as well, and sort of it pays it forward. So in whatever way that trickles down.